think I'm good. Yep. Yep, we're on in 2 minutes. Is it showing up or not? We got more people. I gotta admit them.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Hello, hello.
How are you, Wiki?
How are you, my friend?
I'm good.
You sure do look good. Speaking of color, where'd you get all that color? You out in the sun?
Hey, I've been out in the sun. I've been showing properties. I've been working in the elements.
I like it.
And even though the sun's not shining brightly, you still are subject to the UV.
Well, and I know you've got a daughter that lives or goes to school in South Florida, so I thought maybe you were headed down there and
Next weekend.
There we go. There we go. Well, great.
Hello, Julia.
Yes.
Hey, Wiki, how's it going?
Hi,
Super,
Darren.
super Sam, how are you doing?
Good, buddy.
Good. Sure are glad that you're joining us here today.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna give
What else have we got?
we're gonna give a couple of people some more time to get on there, and I hope that if you have the ability, guys, that you will allow us to see your face and put your camera on, just because of the engagement aspect of all of this being very, very important. Attaboy, Sam. Sam's at the
Great.
beach.
Let me just say that
Yeah, I'm at the island right
I've
now.
been suffering from an unstable Wi-Fi connection here out in Jonesville.
Okay.
I don't know if it's as a result of the inclement weather we've had, but my calls have been dropping, etc. So I do apologize if I happen to lose connection. I'll try to reconnect as quickly as possible.
No worries. No worries. No worries. Let's see who else we have there. We've got Justin Clement. Say hello, Justin.
Hey, Justin.
How's it going, everybody?
Good.
Good.
Sam looks like he's in the Cayman Islands.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Wish I was in the Cayman Islands.
Sounds about right. Sounds
I
good.
both.
doesn't it?
I can't get there before September. So
Well, listen, buddy,
Aye.
you don't need to bring me a T-shirt, but you do need to bring me something across the border that will fit right with my belly.
Some curry goat.
That's exactly right. Well, I will segue into my Jamaican background and connection, where I've eaten plenty of curry goat and I've eaten plenty of oxtail. Should we say late at night?
What?
Nice.
That's right.
oh,
What?
good.
Yeah.
Well, good. People are jumping on, and I'm glad to see that.
Ray looks so different.
Ray, yeah, that's right. There we go.
Well, the real Ray Lopez, please stand up.
The real Ray Lopez. That's right.
Something's going on.
He will be joining us. There he is.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Good. How are you, Ray?
Hey, Ray, how's it going?
Good.
So Ray, I don't
So,
have to-
hey, Wiki, thanks for getting this together. We just wanted to take some time and get everybody to get on and talk a little bit about what the current climate and what's going on. I want to thank Craig Wilburn. He is actually, I don't know if anybody knows this, but he's actually, him and Ogla from Orlando are leading our regional task force. And I just wanted to thank Craig for that. He gave a really nice summation of what's going on in his life to our region last week at 1:30. And, you know, if you'd share a little bit about that, Craig, and maybe what you've, over the last week, what's transpired, that might be a good way to start.
Yeah, so obviously it's been a very enlightening week, you know, across the country. Conversation has shifted off of COVID-19, at least temporarily, on to, you know, matters of, you know, inequities and systemic racism and heavy topics that that our country needs to get more, have a higher, you know, have an increased awareness about. So I look at these things as being, you know, even though they're very challenging conversations, they're very sensitive topics of discussion. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of emotional energy everywhere. I still look at this as a huge opportunity to have a major mindset shift. You know, we talk about the shift that came through the coronavirus for, you know, for our world. And this is also another shift that could happen for our country as long as we continue to take the time to focus on what the problem is, become aware of the how it's woven into the fabric of our country, and then also focus on what can we do collectively for all those that desire to see a change. What can we do as a united, you know, body to be able to impact this? And I called it take a chip out of the iceberg, because it's a major, massive problem. And the more that we get educated about it, the more that we learn about these things, we start to realize how big of a problem it really is. And so it's just going to require everybody that cares to make decisions, to find ways to make change in the areas that have the potential biggest impact. So I had an opportunity to share just kind of some of my personal life experience, which I don't do that. I don't typically do that because I don't subscribe to a mindset that as a Black male, I'm not able to do and achieve the things that I want to have in my life. I don't subscribe to that mindset. However, though, there are many people that do. A lot of it has to do with the fact that, you know, where they are, their environment, their, you know, what they've been taught, what has been passed down from generation to generation, and it's a real thing. And so when you are not someone that has either ever experienced the level of systemic racism that exists in this country, when you have never been a part of it, you've never experienced it, you're not aware of it, or when you are a person that has experienced it but has made certain life changes to break that mentality, you can very easily become desensitized to the realities of what people are struggling with. And so I think this is a huge opportunity for us all to have a major wake-up call and to become more aware of the subtle deceptions and the subtle things that exist that are negatively impacting our entire country. And so it's been a great opportunity for us to engage in this dialogue.
Thanks, Craig. I appreciate you saying those things. You know, Ray and I have talked about this, you know, many times with trying to catch the pulse and the temperature of everything that's going on statewide, you know, and wanting to have that come in more locally. So Darren, I appreciate you getting on the call here today, because Darren and I spent some time together last week as we're talking about this. And when it's all said and done, you know, a good teacher of mine once said, when it's all said and done, more is said than done. Okay. Because lip service is easy. And what we're talking about here is a call to action with respect to our everyday actions and how we treat one another and how we treat customers and how vocabulary that we use. You know, Craig and I got talking about something today that came up with names and how people are, you know, will change their names or what they'll do a subtle difference that is going to make a difference because they're not sure exactly how they're going to be received with respect to their race. You know, for those of you that have not read the Gary Keller letter from last week, I encourage you to do so. If you've all done that, then that is probably why we, you know, named this meeting a town hall about culture, because to me, that's what it is. This is our culture. And, you know, Darren pointed out to me the other day, you know, this is a big, big world. And what really we can have the most effect on is what we do right here at 1053 and our market center and how we just present ourselves and the conversations that we're having and engagement. And as Chris pointed out the other day, Chris Coleman, our MCA that everybody loves and you know, enjoys working with, you know, he's a 54-year-old white male. And his perspective is going to be completely different than, you know, other people's. And this is about, go figure, seek to understand and how we communicate to each other and giving each other the grace for that, for the lack of a better term, because I can't start to understand somebody else's perspective until they trust me. And then if they do trust me, and then I can say, I don't know what your experience is, and I don't know how you view the world. Please educate me. And then if I do say something stupid or I do say something insensitive, that it is not then that you're ready to pin me against a wall and you know, paint me with a broad brush. Instead, you say, this is someone that I trust. This is someone that I care about. This is someone that I go to work with every day and that I have seen their actions every day. And I can pull that person aside and I can say to them, I'd like to talk to you about something that you said because I'm not sure that you thought about this perspective before you said it. And if we are willing to give each other that grace, I just think that as a collective group, we are going to make, you know, better progress going forward. So from the Market Center, this is where we stand. You know, this is, you know, all the things that Gary wrote. That's why we're here today, to have a dialogue where people can feel comfortable in a safe space to either ask questions or to share some insight that we think will benefit everybody. So I want to open up the floor to you guys and know that, like Ray said, you know, Craig Wilburn is a representative for us, not only just on the regional level, but at the IALC level. And that's the International Associate Leadership Council. So, you know, I was talking with Craig, we've got our notepads out today. You know, this is about us trying to take back insight that we think is out there for everybody, because it's the best way that we can then start to make a difference. But if you'll put yourself in a good mindset and know, we're not trying to create a committee here. This is a mastermind. This is a, let's get some information out there because we want this to be a 1053, you know, place of movement for us. So that being said, would anybody like to start?
Let me say I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to participate here. I certainly applaud the efforts of KW International, and even at the grassroots level to challenge the KW offices locally to first acknowledge there's an issue here, and a much bigger issue than we realize beyond the borders of the United States. This is a global pandemic is what it is, an issue. To make a bold statement and of a mission and vision from the corporate level, from Gary all the way down, and a decisive challenge to us to create a dialogue, which is what we're doing here. And hopefully this dialogue will be transparent and honest. And I think the challenge goes beyond that. It should challenge ourselves individually to evaluate introspectively the sum of our experiences and how we show up, what we bring to the table, because we all have our, our individual prejudices at varying levels. I think that that introspective look at ourselves to see, how are we showing up? What are we contributing to get this output that we've been receiving and we've been seeing? We're forced to overhaul our behaviors, our business practices, the structure, the models, and to become more sensitive and inclusive. I think that's the challenge at hand. And at the end of the day, we need to hold each other accountable to effect that level of change. We ought to be able to do this. Out of this effort, we should look at the cause and effect issues, the root cause analysis. What inputs are there that are causing a lot of these issues? I mean, the plight of the people of color globally. There has been historical racism, socioeconomic injustices, the privileged class who, at the end of the day, yes, they came here out of their free will. And then there's another class who came here not of their free will. They're underprivileged. And as a result of that, they've succumbed and have had to withstand socioeconomic injustices for centuries. So these are all root causes that culminate in, what happens today in so many instances of profiling, et cetera. So all of those things I think we need to evaluate. We need to have a good heart-to-heart discussion about and see what we can do at our local level in our Jerusalem to try to effect change at whatever level we can. So thanks again for the opportunity. I applaud the effort. And I look forward to partnering with you guys and working with each of you accordingly.
Great. We thank you for that, Darren. One of the things that Darren just said that I want to make sure that everybody gets is if you guys have, again, today in today's environment, media plays such an important role in all of our lives, whether it's social media or the news media or where it is that you go to get your news. And there's a lot of information that's put out there, and not all of it is good. Another part of media, which we all know this because we're in marketing and real estate, are the images and the videos that are out there. And a lot of those things are there for shock value. And I think that shock value is important because shock value gets our attention. And then it gets us to pay attention to what's going on and whether or not we are going to have a hand in what's happening. I mentioned that because I would love it if you guys, everybody here that's on this call, shared with maybe what we do. Ryan, I know that you can hear me. Maybe what we do is we can put something in the chat where if there's an article that you've read, or there's a video that you've watched, or there's a speaker that you've heard. I saw a documentary on Netflix that I want to promote called 13th. And it speaks to the 13th Amendment. And going back to Darren's point, this has been going on for over 100 years. And so there's an insight there that I think I know I benefited from it. So depending on, your history and depending on your perspective, that was just one thing that I thought that you guys might benefit from. So again, the chat box is there for you. If you've got something that you think that we could all benefit from, don't hesitate. Put it out there because we want to know what you know. So anybody else that wants to say anything?
I'm going to just jump in. If you guys if there's anybody that's on the call that has, had some specific thoughts, ideas, questions, wants to get better understanding on certain ideals or concepts that are being put out there in social media land, this is a safe place to have constructive dialogue. So I know I've been getting private messages from more people than I have the ability to respond to over the past week that want to just understand. They want to ask me about what they heard, and then they want to get clarity on why certain things that they say that they think are uplifting seem to be offensive. They're just trying to connect, to the heart of what's going on. So if there's any of those questions on here, this would be a great opportunity to engage in those kinds of conversations. There's no judgment zone here, safe place to have constructive dialogue.
Well, let me jump in there, Craig. You just touched on it. When somebody makes a post, a social media post, or they're responding to a social media post, I think that I think that social media does this to many of us where we think that it requires the knee-jerk response. what has been your experience with all of the time that you spent there, and probably the advantages and or the pitfalls of responding in a certain way?
All right. So great question. We have to be very, very, very careful regarding, what we say is think before you speak, right? So before you choose to react or respond to anything that anybody says, make sure that as that temptation, that urge arises in you to reactively either agree or disagree, make sure that before you do that, you take a little bit of time to research some of the things that are being spoken about, because sometimes you don't always know the intent of why a person is making the claims that they're making. And you also don't know whether or not the claims that they're making are accurate or just emotionally led. And so the best part always is when you're engaging in these kind of very delicate conversations, the best thing to always do is come from a place of reason and logic and not from emotion. Unfortunately, because this is such an emotionally engaging topic of conversation, what I have personally noticed is that the vast majority of the interactions that are happening revolving around this topic are highly emotionally charged, and a lot of communication is being lost because of the fact that people can't get past their emotions. Now, at the same time, the reason why that is because there is a human need to express emotions. And so just because a person is acting emotionally also does not give us the permission to write them off or dismiss them because they're trying to express what's going on. So it's such a fine, delicate balance in trying to make headway into healing. And so, I just encourage people to be very careful, and it'd be better, if somebody makes a post that intrigues you and you feel led to comment. My experience has shown that if you check back in the next day, that comment is still there. So if you need to pause a minute, do a little research, and then go back a day later and then comment or agree or, challenge or ask more questions from a different perspective, then I would encourage people to do that.
Next thing would be here locally, bringing it back to Gainesville. What has been some of your experiences? I mean, I know we had a rally at Depot Park that was mostly peaceful. As you know, we brought on a county commissioner to one of our meetings, and one of the things that they talked about was they're very aware of what they call social agitators. And so anytime you go to do something downtown, there could be groups of people that would stir the pot to have a peaceful protest turn. And the good news for us here in Gainesville is that was not the case. So that being said, have you guys been in touch with any other groups, Chamber of Commerce, GACAR, anybody that you've had any conversations with that has inspired you to say, hey, wait a minute, I want to do something here. I want to go forward and I want to have an active role in this. Does anybody have a group like that here locally that they would like to share with us?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. That was actually a very close friend of mine that organized the thing last weekend. And so yesterday evening and a couple days before that, we all spent some time together to kind of just debrief, decompress, talk about what next steps are. To echo what Craig said, it was a very highly emotionally charged conversation. And we didn't, it was intentionally, it was supposed to be a more so for just us to get the emotions out. I guess at that point, I was one of the few that had already processed most of my emotions. So it was a lot of that going on. So just know that it is still there. A lot of people are still emotionally charged. But we are making plans today. We're delegating responsibility. So that's one group that I've at least been a part of. I know that GACAR has reached out to me. Our president, Jeremy Thomas, actually reached out to me personally and asked us if there's anything that in any way that we can support this initiative. So, if we do come up with anything inside of our, inside of this group, we do have GACAR behind us.
That's not surprising, but very glad to hear, Malcolm. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. So I guess the next question would be market center wise, guys. What is our, again, Lauren and I had a conversation about this Friday afternoon with respect to, you know, are we being true to ourselves? Are we being true to our culture here in the market center? And Lauren, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you mind sharing what you shared with me on Friday?
Well, I mean, it's a big piggyback of what Craig said. It's about watching our words and making sure that we take time to process our emotions within ourselves before we speak. I know that I shared words with you and I shared words with Chris so that you guys were concerned about how I was feeling. And a lot of that is, I am emotional. And I feel for the situation and I have feelings, but I have feelings I have to separate from the workplace where there are differing opinions and there are differing variations of views on the subject. And I have to make sure that I'm respectful to all of those and that I never put myself in a place where I'm viewing anybody differently or taking what they're saying in a different light and creating a different view of them within myself, you know, because of their differing opinions or their words, or maybe even they're just, you know, their uneducation of the subject of what's going on because they've never experienced it or they don't know how we're feeling. So it's just been, but what we were saying Friday is that I know that I'm in a workplace that promotes culture, that promotes love, that promotes, you know, compassion and caring and togetherness. So it's never an issue of whether I feel like I can't express myself, but having the words come from Gary Keller, from the, you know, coming from the head to the bottom meant a lot to me because it's a stance that I didn't feel like he was going to make. Not that I feel like he was against it, but just to make a stance, period, is big as a company that, you know, when you have you're an international company and you know that you have perspectives all over the place that may not be in line, you know, so it's just for him to make that decision and to trickle that down and share it with all of us at midnight, you know, when he could have been doing whatever he could have been doing, means that we were on his heart. And that means something to me, to work for a company that felt enough to say something. So that's where I kind of am with it as far as leadership.
I want to jump in real quick on what you're talking about, specifically on the Gary Keller piece, because, you know, I want us all to recognize how big of a deal it was for Gary Keller to make a statement the way he did, and for him to have even went so far as to let everybody know that, you know, effective immediately, they were going to put things in place to change even the opportunity for it to grow inside of our company, because we have over 180,000 people, the largest real estate company on earth.
Right.
And you have to understand the reality is that there's a whole lot of folks that don't agree with any of this, okay,
right,
inside of our company. So
they
Gary,
don't feel like we should be talking about it, any of it.
Yeah, so Gary Keller put himself out there big time for a large potential percentage of the company that, you know, would take issue, you know, potentially with the fact that he's trying to take a stand for such a small percentage of his company. I mean, you look at, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's small when you look at the 180,000 people and how many are, you know, of, you know, color or, you know, whatever you want to call it. It's not a large percentage. And so he put himself at great risk at a big level. So I want people to understand that took a lot of courage for him to do that, because nothing required him to do that. And so we need to be aware that's the kind of leader that we have. And I think also one of the reasons why people of any color should look at that for what it was and say, this is one of the reasons why we're here, because he's not afraid to take a stand on things that are right and wrong.
Exactly.
So,
and the person
I'll
who
also just say that one of the things.
Go ahead,
Lauren.
No, go ahead. I was just saying that Gary, personally, to me, felt like he took a stance for me, for the people like me that I didn't think he was thinking about. You know, the people like me, not just, you know, people of color, but the people who felt like I felt, the people who were upset. And for him to take that time at midnight, when he could have been sleeping, to say something, to just share some words to let him know that we're not alone, meant everything. Everything. There are companies that we are still waiting on word from for them to take a stance that haven't taken stances because they're afraid of, you know, tipping the scale. But for him to boldly and adamantly make that statement and then send it to everyone, not just make a video that some people could have seen, but to send it personally to all of our email accounts, means a lot.
Yeah,
him
and
out.
it's not like even like again, I think for most of us, like I don't personally need Gary Keller to make a statement on anything.
Right.
You know, like I don't
Right.
need that to for me to still do what I'm going to do.
Right.
It's just a recognition of the fact that he chose to do it,
Mhm.
and I think that's really the core principle there.
Yeah, I'll echo that sentiment. Really, I'll echo that sentiment, and I'll also just add to it by saying the fact that he chose to make that statement shows us what our company is really about, which I already feel. You know, if we're talking about how this is a very emotional time, I don't feel as though Keller Williams is an environment where this is more of a struggle than it is when I go outside the walls of Keller Williams. So I do feel like that this kind of environment has already been created within our company. And so there will be some things that we can probably do to bring some change within KW Gainesville, within the company Keller Williams, international. But I will say that I see our efforts being more so outside of our walls, be it being an outreaching, because as far as our culture, I don't think we have that problem. Although there are people with differing opinions, those people I still have great relationships with. And it's still, this is a very fair environment. Very fair, very loving. Gary Keller's heart is already deeply rooted into the company.
Well, to piggyback off what you just said, Malcolm, like, people with different opinions, I think it goes more on the side of understanding.
Yes.
Than it is more of people having, everybody have different opinions. But I've spoken to people, and, and they may say, well, what's wrong with saying all lives matter? Or what's wrong with saying blue lives matter? Well, blue lives, there's no blue people, all right? That's an occupation. And an occupation should not value that life more than mine or yours or anybody else as your occupation. And when you say all lives matter, that is true 100%. But there's a scripture, it's been going around the internet, Jesus, 100 sheep, one left, he left the 99 to take care of the one. Because at that particular time, there is one that needs more attention, whatever the reason may be. Same thing, when you say Black Lives Matter, you're not discounting everybody else. You're just saying, well, at this particular time, these particular people need more attention for whatever it may be. Now, it's unfortunate that we only have about 20 people on this call that have, over 100 agents, I guess, here in the office, and so everybody can really get a better sense of what's going on, because I think there just really needs to be a better understanding so we don't have these communication differences or whatever, when we're talking amongst ourselves and people are saying, well, why this, why that, why not this, why not that? So that we just understand, like, hey, we are all on the same team. At this particular time, there's a certain group of people that needs more attention for whatever the reason may be. So that's just showing empathy. That's just being compassionate. That's just doing what we need to do to take care of our brothers in Christ, or our brothers and brothers, or whatever it may be, so we can all have a better, so we can get to where they need to be, so they won't continue to go through the same things over and over again. So I think, we just got to have a better understanding. So maybe that's something we can create, like we have here with the Zoom call. Maybe we can create something along those lines within our office here. I don't know what you can do. I have no idea. Just saying, like, whatever it may be, just so there's a better understanding. So I learned a long time ago. Craig taught me a lot. I've known Craig for 20 years. Dan, a long time. So I learned a long time ago not to take up an offense. All right. So I don't get offended when people don't understand or ask me a question that other people may say is stupid or whatever. I don't get offended. I don't have time for that. I have more things to do in life. So I think that's what I'm saying. I think we just got to have a better understanding so people won't get offended when things are said. Like when you came and you spoke to me, those are some things I touched on. Hey, stay away from those. All lives matter. Stay away from blue. Those type of things, because it comes across as insensitive, being insensitive, but I think it's more of a lack of understanding, if that makes any sense. And that's that's just how I, just feel about that, And then with the groups thing, there's a lot of groups and people trying to do things, they're separate, like Malcolm's doing something. I'm involved with some people. We're trying to put together something in a couple of weeks. There's a lot of things to get involved with. But I think the more we can communicate and have a better understanding on both sides, I think that's going to really stop a lot of issues and a lot of negative comments, a lot of bad conversations, a lot of people feelings getting hurt. I think that would really bring everybody together better. That's lack of better.
And just to add to that, as far as just kind of helping people gain perspective and understanding about what the real issue is, I'm going to just read to you guys one of the best ways that I've seen it written so far, or one of the ways it stands out to me. It says, our founding fathers have already told us that all lives matter in the Declaration of Independence. The Black Lives Matter movement is predicated on reminding those who seem to have forgotten that all men includes Black men also. All lives matter, or saying that at least takes away from the focus from who we are advocating for in this movement. So it's not that we don't know that already. It's not that we're not aware. It's just remember, this is a movement to bring equality. Someone is not being treated as well as they could be, and that's all that we're trying to do. So it's not that we don't care about anyone else at all.
Right. Even when you bring up founding fathers, that can cause an issue. Because, even this country, just saying that, founding fathers, well, who are you talking about? Because if you talk to people who are being oppressed and everything else, well, it was not our founding fathers. We were brought over here against our will. So, it's a very touchy subject, So that's why I think just having a better understanding would just be, I think that would just go a long way. I think that's just life, though,
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you saying that, Malcolm. Thanks. Marquise, thanks for chiming in on that. What I hear when I heard that said goes back to Darren ringing in my head. This is for us. This is about 1053. And what are we going to do here at 1053? And as you just mentioned, how do we get this group to go from 20 to 100? And that answer is very, very simple. We'll have another meeting next week, and I would encourage all of you, reach out to the 3 agents that you're closest to. I'm proud. I see a lot of agents here from different teams, and I see a lot of agents that are single agents. And again, we all belong to the same team, and that's KW 1053. And so getting somebody else on here so that they can hear these perspectives and they can hear some of these stories, I think that is where we start to make the progress that we need to make. From one of the things that I was talking with, and Ray, you chime in here if you want to, I'm speaking with team leaders all over the state, and there are different problems in different areas. So we cannot compare ourselves to Orlando. We cannot compare ourselves to Tampa. We cannot compare ourselves to these other places. We have to be local, okay? And so what I'm asking for, I guess, is as we share these ideas with each other, what does that look like from an action step standpoint? Go ahead, Julia.
So I think that I've enjoyed hearing everybody's thoughts on this, and I would agree that, what I can do and what, non-Black people can do to help understand a perspective is to get information. And not only, I find it difficult in conversations to get information because either the emotion is a factor or the ignorance is a factor. And so you don't want to say something that's dumb, or you do say something that's dumb, or if they say something that's inaccurate, you don't have enough information to counter it and really, have an educated context. But why don't we do something as simple as a group of us saying, I'm engaging in getting more information. Like, I watched the 13th, video, I did this, I did that, and try and encourage people. I heard about the 13th video like a week ago from Wiki, and every day he's been like, have you watched it? You gonna watch it? You gonna watch it? And then, you know, Craig mentions it today, and Sarah Chauncey is on her Facebook, and, you know, apparently it's very, very good. So if we can create kind of enthusiasm and a unity for the the challenge of consuming, you know, data and consuming information so that we can enlighten our perspective, and rise to a different standard of, you know, knowledge and sensitivity, you know, maybe that's something that we could do.
I agree 100%, Julia, because even coming from someone who relates to this emotionally, I find it difficult for me to have the difficult conversations because I don't want to look at anybody differently, because I don't want to be emotionally charged and upset, and because I don't want to deal with those emotions. So you know, I'm a bury it down kind of person because I don't want to see anybody differently. I don't want to have those confrontational conversations, but we need to, for the people who care enough to have them with us, and for the people who care enough to learn. It's like, and I'm picking on Chris as I always do, but it's like the way Chris called me in the office and he said, Lauren, I've never been a person of color. I've always been a 54-year-old. I mean, I've always been a white man. That's all I know, and that's all I've ever been. It's all, you know, it's all that I can relate to for information and, you know, perspective. And I appreciate that, because you're right. I've never been a white woman. I've only ever been who I am.
Yeah.
So I only understand my circumstances, my experiences, my perspective, my emotions. I've only ever experienced those. But for someone who hasn't had the same relations I have, like me and Chris were talking, and I was able to name George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and the names. The way I was, even he made the observation that the way you know those names, and I said, I know those names because they've affected me. But if they don't affect you, you wouldn't know them. You may know the instances, you may know the stories, you may know what you've heard, but you don't know the personal relation to it, like we would, like the people who are affected would know. But it's not until we have those conversations and we tell people, this is why I'm hurt by this is why I'm upset by this is why I'm emotional about this, then we can begin to get some understanding. Like Marquis was saying, we have understanding. Then we have a kind of, you know, a mutual charged feeling. Then we really can figure out how to go from there.
I think it would be interesting. I know the whole COVID thing might be a challenge, but, you know, to use the training room and invite the office, you know, to view these important, significant movies, videos, whatever, and then having an opportunity to discuss it, you know, and only discuss the content. Don't, you know, it's such a, like Craig was saying, it's such a glacier, you know, you just can't get into everything. But, you know, you can certainly give feedback of, well, this section of the video really impacted me. Well, this is why, you know, this is what it meant to me, you know, and just kind of like have a, you know, coming of the minds, and everyone, and I will hug afterwards. And, you know, that's goofy, but that's what I think.
Just to say it, because I don't know if everybody can see the chat, Bethany just had a really good idea to piggyback off what you just said, Julia, about creating some kind of education challenge in the Market Center, like a 30-day calendar of a podcast, book, documentary, something that we can challenge each other and hold each other accountable to learning for all of us. Because there are things that we don't know, that all of us don't know, that we could all expand and learn together. And I really, really love that idea, Bethany.
So
I really,
brilliant.
really do.
So brilliant.
I'm upset that I didn't think about it sooner. It makes sense. Because like I said, Wiki's been talking about the 13 documentary. I have not watched it. There's a lot of other things I'm sure that I have not watched that I would love to watch, but we can learn and do this together. If we care enough to support each other, why would we not? I think that's a wonderful idea.
I was just jumping in quickly, the so good of an idea, because education is going to be the critical thing. And even like watching the 13th video, I watched it last night for the first time, and I learned some things that I didn't even know about, you know, and so it was like, wow. And, you know, I think one of the dialogues, and again, this is a safe place here. So, and I know we're recording and hopefully we'll share it, but this is still a safe place. I don't mind saying this. One of the challenges that exist right now is that one of the, I think, distractions that is out there is this concept that this is a white versus black issue. And I don't believe that. I don't believe it's a white versus black issue. I think it's a systemic racism issue. And so there are things that have been established in this country from a long time ago that subtly oppress Black people specifically. And it's not white people, it's the systems that are in place. And so I think what happens is oftentimes because of emotionally charged energy, we want to attack specific individuals, whether it's the president or whether it's this company or whether it's this white person or that person that said a racist comment or this person said the N-word, whatever's going on. But the real problem lies far more entrenched into the fabric of the country, and it's a much bigger nut to crack. And calling name calling and pointing fingers at people is not going to fix that problem at all. And so I think it's a distraction, and I think we need to be more diligent and using resources of intellect and understanding what's going on, and then to build camaraderie between everybody to be able to attack the issue. Because this thing, even though it affects a very targeted group of people, specifically directly, it impacts everybody else. And so we have to be very, very mindful of that.
To piggyback off of that, I was telling Chris, I was like, this has always been an issue, but it's a major issue and it's a worldwide issue because of social media. We're in a time now where everything we're doing, every interaction is recorded. It's recorded and broadcasted. And that's kind of, I'm not saying that this is an outrage within itself, but it's more of an outrage because, like I said, it's been seen. We learned about it on Facebook. We saw it on Twitter. We saw it on, our family have recordings and they've shared it with us. It's something that we've been shared and seen for our own eyes to where we know that it's happening. And it's, and it's being recorded and it's being documented and it's part of history. And that's why it's got the attention that it has, but it doesn't just have attention from people of color. That's what's amazing me about the whole thing now is that it's worldwide. Italy, Europe, Germany, countries that we wouldn't think would have even a stance on this are taking stances and protesting and coming to the streets and coming in agreement that this is a worldwide issue, not just an America issue, not just a people of color issue, not just a one state issue. It's a worldwide thing. And that's the light that needs to be happening. That's the light that needs to be shining, that we all see that it's an issue everywhere and that we all have to come together to stop it, because it's way deeper than just within each of us as an individual. It's systematic.
And to continue to see things move in a positive direction, one thing that I've seen help the success of other people as far as trying to learn, trying to understand, is how you communicate the message. Just, the skills that we all as salespeople work on all the time, right? How we say it.
Right.
And so, I've seen a lot of people responding with, hey, I understand that you think that way. Why? Let me ask another question before I answer, before I just respond to you on social media because of how I feel. Well, what do you mean? Explain that to me. Okay. And then when they explain it, when you fully understand where they're coming from, then let's have some healthy dialogue. That includes loving language, helping them understand that their perspective is appreciated, because that is important to see. Although we have a movement here, some perspectives that are contrary to the movement help us provide insight on how we might be focusing on the wrong things as it relates to the movement, or how we might be, although we, this is an issue that affects a group of people in a negative way, are we giving them that same exact treatment in response? So I've just been very loving, very patient in my responses, and I've seen a lot of people do that as well. And the overwhelming response is, well, thank you for having this dialogue with me, as opposed to what I see all the time, where it's, well, why do you think that? So I always just, I've seen people just slow down and take those steps, and there's been a lot of effectiveness.
I've had to take the questions, and lack of understanding is not an attack.
Ray, go ahead.
Guys, hey guys, I'm about to go meet my CPA and finish my taxes, but I wanted to thank everybody for getting on. This doesn't mean this ends. I think this is a great way for us to communicate, especially in the current climate of what's going on. And I love that everybody's being involved, and I'm hoping everybody will chime in, because what we're looking for is different perspectives, from different people. I mean, I grew up in an all-white and somewhat Black community. I was the only Hispanic growing up. There was nobody named Rodriguez or Lopez. So I was the minority of minorities growing up. So, I get where this is coming from ultimately, but what I love is now we're very aware, and unfortunately it had to bring up a traumatic event or a series of events for it to be brought up. but I'm glad that it's coming to the forefront and we're talking about it in a positive way, which I think is fantastic. And I just wanted to take time and just say thank you for doing this. And Wiki and Chris and Lauren and the leadership group, thanks for making this happen. And let's continue to keep moving forward. So
how about this for perspective? You got a guy named Ray Lopez living in a predominantly white area, very few blacks, Spanish dude looking like a Hawaiian. Okay, so I mean, they don't get no more well-rounded than that, right there.
It doesn't.
Right. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ray.
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks, Ray.
And I love that he said that, because diversity. I've always been a believer that diversity actually increases everyone's quality of life, because there are so many different perspectives. All of our lives are better because everyone's opinion, everyone's experience is being heard and digested all the same, and used to enhance our society.
Okay.
Add something to what Malcolm just said.
Sure.
It's a science analogy, because that's my background. But basically, biodiversity is what makes life possible. So when you study a coral reef or tropical rainforest, you learn that so many aspects of that environment can only survive with the diversity of that community. So I definitely strongly believe that diversity makes us stronger, because you can see it on a literal level in science and nature, and then you see it socially as well. And I also wanted to add that that social media is super emotionally charged, and I've seen a lot of posts from people that are white about kind of almost trying to shame others into speaking up or using their voice. And I think it's really important to understand that my voice isn't what I post on social media, my voice is what I say in my community and to my friends and family. And so I don't want anyone to feel like I'm being silent, because there's a lot of silence is violence, and then there's people just posting things just to show their solidarity or to prove that they're not racist, and I don't really want to be a part of that. I'd much rather be in this conversation and be part of making changes kind of behind the scenes. And so I definitely kind of live by the motto that you work hard in silence and let your success speak for itself. So I like the behind the scenes role that I usually take in a lot of jobs. But I just wanted you guys to know that I'm here and I'm listening and I'm supporting, even if it seems silent.
No, but Bethany, I want you to understand that we get that on both sides, because I've had people approach me and be like, Lauren, you haven't said anything on your Facebook. And I was like, well, my Facebook, I don't feel like it's a platform. I use my Facebook for business. I have a lot of relationships, a lot of diverse relationships, and I don't feel like that's my voice to make there.
Right. It's not always the platform for change in positive ways. It's not always. Exactly. It depends on the conversation, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you're right. Your voice is your voice. It's however you choose to share or deal, and even if you do keep silent, that's your choice too. It's all ultimately your choice.
Jump in there, Chris Coleman. I saw you with your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to thank all the guys for sharing their opinions and express an attitude that might come from my age more than anything. And I think I shared a lot of this with Lauren. If you had seen or heard things that were said by my grandfather, who was born in Alabama, you would be totally appalled. As a young person, I understood what he was saying wrong because my life was so different than his. If you heard things that came out of my father's mouth, you would have been just as appalled. Not to the degree as what my grandfather said or what my father said. So I was the first one in our family who was never in a segregated class, who played sports, never had any kind of separation on buses or anything like that. That'll give you some idea of where I sit age-wise. So, as I go through life, I'm thinking, wow, I'm so much better than so-and-so. And when you set the bar that low and you have these blinders like, oh, that's not my problem, that's not my issue, that you kind of closed out a whole period of learning for yourself. I will say this, that the things I've seen over the past 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, and seeing the things that my daughter sees and start to get some of her impression of all the things that have happened, the one video that really clicked with me were those two young ladies in Atlanta who were going out to get something to eat, and somebody comes up there and then busts the window and the door opens up and the girl's just terrified and she gets tased. Does that ring a bell with you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the one that personalized it to me, because for whatever reason, that's the one's like, I can see my daughter doing that. Things that have happened over the past 30 years have made me realize that I've been blind and ignorant to a situation. And it presents a level of fear when you go, how did I miss this? How did I not see it? And I feel like suddenly I've been airdropped into a minefield. That there's a time for action, there's a time for listening and trying to understand. And I want my teammates to know that I'm in that period. And I think I heard some of that from Bethany, where I'm trying to listen, I'm trying to understand, and I'm trying to become more educated from the biases that I know that I've brought to the table. And I just want you guys to know I'm hearing you, and the things you're sharing are really, really helpful to me. And if any words of wisdom, I'm all ears.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you sharing that, as I hope everybody else does too. I've got about 5 minutes to 1. If anybody else wants to add anything, please just raise your hand up in the air. Otherwise, what I'd like to do is I'd like to take some of these ideas, Julia's idea, Bethany's idea, Malcolm's idea, Marquise, that we've got this stuff written down. I think the real part would be the one of strength for all of us, which is, can we challenge ourselves, not just to watch the video and to get educated on that, but can we challenge ourselves that the next time that we get together like this, that there's 3 times as many people on this call. And that would be just the strength of your influence. Again, I've heard too many people say all the time, yeah, I want to support. What can I do? What can I do? Well, this is what you can do. You can come and you can listen. You can listen in a place, as we've already designated this. And if you feel differently, please reach out to me privately. But if this is the place that we're creating at Gainesville 1053, that is at a safe place where we can bounce ideas off of each other, not feel judged, instead feel safe to say, I know that somebody is going to forgive me for saying something or thinking something or asking a question, and know that I'm coming from that place of, I want to learn. I want to listen. I want to be smarter the next time I engage in a conversation. Because again, we bring it all back to, real estate. You guys are out there every day touching the public, and you guys are the best representation that we have of KW culture. And how that happens every day makes a difference. And again, that starts here. And no, we can't wrap our arms around each other right now with COVID, but we can certainly do it this way the best we can. So those are my final thoughts. If anybody has any other final thoughts or takeaways or steps of actions in our last few minutes, please raise your hand and say so. Make it brief, only because that'll give everybody the chance. You're muted, Malcolm.
Okay, you're muted, Malcolm. There you go.
I only wanted to say, let's just keep people focused on what the real issues are and not allow ourselves to get distracted by things that might be close to the movement but are not really what's going on, or might just be complete and intentional opportunities to distract from the movement, right? Or to bring negative attention to it. So just whenever you have someone.
Do me a favor, Malcolm, define what that means. What are the peripheral things that you're referring to? Because I don't know what they are.
Thank you. So I see a lot of people trying to associate the looters and the looters with people who are doing peaceful protests, right? So whenever I see that, I take it personally to say, hey, listen, this is 2 separate things. Right. Or when I also see people who only choose to speak up about a certain event or a certain line of thinking. Like, for instance, I have someone who I didn't see much posting, but I saw that they chose to specifically talk about the not so peaceful rioting that was going on at the police center on the same day that we had our protest. And so, it's great. People should know that those things happen. And yet at the same time, I just wanted to make sure that since he was bringing light to it on his social media, I wanted to make sure that he was also gaining full perspective, and everyone who was choosing to listen to him was also paying attention to the fact that this is not the main topic of discussion. This was 5% of what happened. Let's also just be responsible and share the other 95% of what happened. We had
Yeah,
a 4,000 person
on that
march.
note, Malcolm, another topic of discussion that you got to be careful of is black on black crime. This is another focus that is brought up a lot, trying to distract from the reality of what's going on. So that's another topic to be careful to avoid right now.
And racism itself is not going to go away. Craig and I were on a call last week, and this was a nugget for me, is that racism is systemic and it's generational. Like Chris was saying earlier, he's the first person in his lineage to have some of the experiences that he has, which makes him less susceptible to thinking that way, right? And so how we fight it is the systemic reinforcement of those thoughts. People are still going to have those thoughts and those feelings, and we can't allow ourselves to get angry or distracted or taken off track by people feeling that way. Let them feel that way for now, and slowly but surely we will discourage that behavior when there's legal accountability, the same as there is for anyone else, right? If Wiki were to kill someone, he would have the same, the same repercussions if I were, or to Chris were, or anyone, right? So we fight it that way.
Thank you. Darren, you were going to say something?
No.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
Well, my last words were, I thank everyone for the love and the support that I've been shown here since day one. Since I told Wiki, since my interview, I knew what the culture was of Keller Williams. I knew what the values were, what the expectations were, what the community was like. And even through all of this, none of that has ever wavered for me. None of that has ever changed. None of that, I never expected any of that to change. And I just thank you guys for creating the love and the support in this family that you guys have already created. And I love you guys for continuing to keep that up and for having dialogues like this to show me that I'm in the right place. I'm surrounded by love. I'm surrounded by family. I'm surrounded by understanding. And I thank you guys for that, especially everybody on this call, because that shows that you guys were not afraid to have the uncomfortable conversation. For you guys were not afraid to learn. You guys were not afraid to see how we feel, not just people of color, but how everybody feels about what's going on in the world. I just thank you all for that openness, and I love you all so much for it. Because I couldn't imagine having this. I couldn't imagine having this in any of the other jobs I've ever worked in my life. Not one of them. So I appreciate that.
I feel really blessed that we have 3 individuals who just so happens on my screen are lining up right in a row there of Craig, his family set up, successful business person, that perspective. Malcolm, who's all about sharing and trying to educate folks, and then Darren gives us another, very bright gentleman with a global perspective. We are really, really blessed.
And you guys are all business leaders. You guys all have people that you work with daily, that people under you, people who work with you that share your same values, because you guys built teams and businesses based on that. And I appreciate you all for doing that. That's just, it says a lot.
Yeah, let me just make one comment. I've changed my mind. I think, so my caution would be, yes, education is important. We need to educate ourselves as to why we are here today in this predicament. The second thing is we have to be careful of being overwhelmed, because we want to know what can we do to affect change, and there's so much. We can't eat an elephant in one bite, right? One bite at a time. So let's identify those things, those few bites where we can affect change, not just at the market center, but beyond the walls, like Malcolm says, of the market center in our communities. We are responsible to our communities so that this can go outside and spread wider than and beyond our communities. As we've seen, it's now a global issue. So let's not get paralyzed by too much analysis. Let's figure out what we can do in small ways to start affecting change, and then we can go from there and build upon that.
Again, I'll say thank you, Darren. I'll say this as we sign off. Please reach out to me individually if you want to have a conversation about this. I am going to reach out to you guys as well, because the next time we come together like this, I have my marching orders, which I just got from Darren, which is we are going to break down the elephant bite-sized bites, because that I think is what is going to improve us all. So again, the communication, hopefully you'll get good communication from Lauren about what we're doing next. And for those of you, again, if you've got anything that you think that's out there that somebody needs to be educated on, please don't hesitate to send that to Lauren, and Lauren will promote it. Okay?
I'm sorry, one quick thing. I just forwarded you, Wiki, something important that the county just released last night regarding racial injustice in this county. So we'll send that out to everybody as well, and you can see what they're doing right now, what they're working on.
All right. Thank you, guys. Be
Thank
safe.
you.
Take care of your families. We appreciate your time.
Yes, absolutely. Take
Bye-bye.
care.